Welcome back to the programme. Such pictures have become commonplace in Europe as NATO completed the region's largest war games since World War II. That's in response to concerns about alleged Russian aggression. NATO's actions in response to what it sees as Russian assertiveness were widely discussed in the German parliament today, with mixed messages coming from Angela Merkel.
In the east, Russia's actions in Ukraine have deeply disturbed our eastern allies. During the NATO summit in Warsaw, we'll add new measures that will strengthen our deterrence and defense strategy. Essentially, it's about a larger presence in the Baltic states and Poland.
Security in Europe is only possible when it's not against Russia, but with Russia.
Well, we can cross live to Berlin, where our correspondent Peter Oliver can shed some more light on this. Peter, good to see you there. Busy day in the Bundestag. What else was said there?
Well, NATO has been widely discussed in the German parliament throughout Thursday. But what we have seen, though, is some splits at the very top of German politics when it comes to the current role that the alliance is playing and Germany's role within that alliance. We've heard before this meeting today from Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the German foreign minister, saying that the recent activities of NATO in Eastern Europe amount to little more than sabre-rattling and warmongering.
The one thing we shouldn't do now is inflame the situation with loud saber-rattling and warmongering. Whoever believes that a symbolic tank parade on the NATO alliance's eastern border will bring security is mistaken.
Well, it would seem that a vast majority of the German people are on side with Mr. Steinmeier. A YouGov poll said that 64% of them thought that there was no point in sending more troops to Eastern Europe. However, with only 9% of those polled saying it would be a good idea to station these extra troops in that part of the world. Now, it's currently being debated on the floor of the Bundestag as a plan to really see a new view when it comes to global security in this part of the world. It was put forward by the Left Party. It would pretty much see the complete scrapping of NATO as we know it and the establishment of a new security alliance that would stretch from Lisbon in the west all the way over to Vladivostok in the east, essentially seeing Russia and NATO members, as well as those other European nations that aren't part of NATO, all joining together to work for the common good. Well, we heard from Angela Merkel getting today's busy session in the Bundestag off to a start, saying that she would continue to provide the funds needed to live up to Germany's obligations. However, we also heard from the Left Party, the opposition here in Germany, saying that money could be spent better elsewhere.
NATO states will also once again stress their commitment to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. Germany has been supporting it for many years. We have also agreed for a significant rise in our defense budget for 2017.
We spend 25 billion euro each year on deadly weapons and military equipment. But apparently, we don't have enough money for better purposes, like education, for example. Such priorities are simply absurd. I cannot find another word for it.
Well, it's highly unlikely that the bill that is on the floor of the Bundestag to see Germany move away from NATO will get through. We're expecting a vote on that in around 10 minutes or so. So I'll be back a little later on to tell you exactly how that panned out.
All right, Peter, keep us updated. Peter Oliver there in Berlin giving us the latest on those discussions in the German parliament.
Thank you.
The Gulf of Mexico has a troubled past when it comes to water pollution. Take the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010, when 4.9 million barrels of oil are estimated to have leaked into its waters. Let's take a look exactly what happened. This is where the explosion took place 6 years ago, just south of New Orleans. As you can see, environmentalists fear lessons haven't been learnt, though. Take a look at these. The red dots on the map indicate offshore fracking wells all along this coast. Activists say in recent years the US government has handed out more than 1,000 fracking permits in the very same area. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, 76 billion gallons of toxic wastewater has been pumped into the Gulf as a result of offshore fracking. Kristen Monsell, who's behind the report, feels government agencies don't realize the consequences of handling out all these licenses.
We had to submit a FOIA request to even know that they were permitting fracking offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. And one of the most startling things was that the agencies didn't even know it was happening. They didn't even know what they were allowing. In fact, it took our FOIA request and the agency going through all of its well records for them to even know how many frack jobs they had permitted. They did so without conducting any real environmental analysis or any analysis on the impacts to threatened and endangered species, and without involving the public, and that's just unacceptable.
Well, the wastewater that leaked into the Gulf is claimed to contain chemicals that cause irreversible damage to ecosystems. Many marine species die or suffer genetic mutations in future generations. The pollution also affects coastal communities and increasing the risk of cancer among residents. Kristen Mansell again told us more about the hazardous nature of these substances.
The government hasn't really studied it before. They haven't studied the impacts of the chemicals that these companies are allowed to dump directly into the ocean, including in critical habitat for threatened and endangered species like loggerhead sea turtles. The chemicals used in offshore fracking are listed as among the most toxic in the entire world with respect to aquatic life, and it's just too big of a risk with our fragile ocean ecosystems. I mean, the Gulf of Mexico is one of the most biologically diverse, productive ecosystems in the entire country. And the administration is just allowing these oil companies to frack at will without doing any real analysis whatsoever. And that's just unacceptable.